Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for another episode of Get Stiff.
Get Stiff is a podcast where we have conversations around grief, loss, and everything in between over cocktails. Each episode coincides with a themed cocktail, and we share the recipe with our listeners.
So, Dr. Whitney and I are back enjoying another round of Ruby Reds, and we are going to play a little game. I am going to pull a random card from the Death Deck, and ask you some questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Hold on.
So, it's not an ad for the Death Deck. It's just something that I bought and love, and I think it's a great way to have some hard conversations.
Ooh, interpersonal effectiveness?
Interpersonal effectiveness on deck.
On deck.
On Death Deck. See what I did there? All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
On the rack. If your spouse died, which article of his clothing would you keep, and which one would you be glad to never see again?
Let's see. So I've been living with my partner for 5 months now. What would I keep? What would I throw away? Let me tell you. I figured it out. I got there. I just had to go through the closet. I would throw away the flag football practice jerseys that belong to other people that he's never going to see again. It's bad enough we have your flag football jerseys. I would get rid of other people's flag football jerseys, and I would keep everything else, and I wear everything of his. Because it's our closet.
Our closet.
Your side has the fun shirts, so I wear them. That also, I just want to say, that reminded me of a show that you put me up on that actually changed my life, which was the Marie Kondo Art of Tidying Up.
Okay, side note, Did you see that she's now come out and said that she is not as interested in living her method anymore because she's had another baby? And she said, tidying just does not bring me joy. And I'm like, you know what, girl? I feel you.
I heard that Japanese business mogul.
Do you know what? Wherever you are, Marie Kondo, I hope you are having a wonderful day. I truly hope you are having the day you deserve. Because what a queen.
What a queen. And in one of those episodes, there was a grieving widow who had to get rid of her husband's belongings. And he was a big guy. And she needed help because he took up such a big spot in her home as well as in her life. And so when you asked me that, I thought about like what joy I could get from that kind of tidying up. I'm going to think back to this podcast.
All right. Oh, I've actually done a video about this, but I'm curious to ask you. A loved one suggests that jewelry be made containing their cremated remains. Would you wear it? A, sure. I'd love to wear my loved one. B, I'd gladly accept it and tuck it safely in a drawer. C, no, comma, yuck. Our memories are treasure enough for me.
That's funny.
Are you wearing the people sand? Yes or no?
Well, the people sand. It's funny because each of those reactions are appropriate for a different person in my life. So that's how I would answer that. I have loved ones who I'll wear around my neck for sure. And other loved ones where it's like, I actually have an altar space in our home that I made that has bits and pieces of people from their funerals that I've attended and things like that. In fact, I have some Matt Reed weed. It's a jar of weed I'll never smoke. It just is there because he gave it to me.
It's just there.
Matt Reed weed.
So let me ask you this. You did mention, you said it varies depending on the family member, right? So if I'm kicking the bucket tomorrow, are you wearing me around your neck?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
You heard it here, folks.
I'm only taking it off to shower.
Consider that. Or else I can't turn into mud around your neck, right?
No soggy Shannons.
No soggy Shan. No soggy Shan.
Soggy Shan sand.
You soggy Shan. I can't even say it. Soggy Shan sand.
Yeah, I feel like friends I would wear around me. My parents would be in a respectful, well-lit altar, like showcased. But like to me, it's like not wearing you. Your DNA is in me. I am wearing you.
I am you.
I am you. And then people who are in alternative categories can be yuck. They can be yuck.
I feel fortunate to have made that list.
Yeah, it's a short list.
All right. I have one more question for you. Would you say you imagine your death or the death of your loved ones more often?
Oh my gosh. I am plagued by imagining Johnny's death.
Yeah?
It is stupid. Like, why am I fixating on all of this is what I'm talking about. Present moment awareness, Whitney. Like, I'd spend too much time investing in my fears. And now that I found someone who is worth spending the rest of my life with, now I'm concerned with them leaving me. Mm-hmm. And not through divorce, because I wish a nigga would. But like, through death. Like, you really left me.
Oh my gosh. That's my birthday wish every year.
Yes.
Every year. You ask me, Shannan, what did you wish for? And I said, I wish the bitch would. And yet a bitch has never. To this day, I'm still waiting.
Yeah. Wish a nigga would like a tree in this bitch.
Huh.
And so I actually have to talk to my therapist. I continue to talk to my therapist about this. Like, when she asks me what my top fears are, my partner dying and leaving me is top 2. Because everything else, I'm much more willing to accept. Like, everyone dies, but not my partner.
So
I'm not ready.
I have a follow-up question that's not in this deck, but
yeah.
Do you think that has happened to you, or that is one of your fears because you watched it happen so closely to me? Because you were there during that process. You were with me in the hospital. You were there when he died. You were there through that whole grief process with me. Do you think that has contributed, seeing that firsthand? Do you think that has contributed to your fears and now possibly losing this partner that you have found?
If anything, I wish your journey contributed to my fears more. Because look at you, resilient ass. Capable of love and happiness once more. Like, honestly, I could take more from your story.
Oh, my goodness.
But I will say, yes, that trauma certainly has affected me. And that was happening when we were in our, I don't know, like young adult lives. Pardon me. That's when we were kind of feeling like we were getting things under control. And that was definitely scary and,
said, bitch, you
traumatic to rug gone.
The universe said, bitch, you thought.
Bitch, we thought. So yes, I do think that has contributed because you and I are so close, and it was like very easy for me to overly empathize with you. And so present moment awareness has been has led me to, I think, increase my tolerance to distress, especially when I'm the bitch distressing me. Mm-hmm. And I'll even tell him, I'll tell my partner, I just had a nightmare where you died, or I just had a terrible thought about you dying. And he'll be like, but I'm here now. So like, what you gonna do about it?
But did I?
But did you die? And that is like, just shake me, like get me back to I understand why people say pinch me, because it's like, make my senses remember that they don't live in the future. Make them. I won't share which part of me she pinched just now.
Oh my God. Well, Whitney, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me this evening. This has been so much fun. Yeah, I've had a fabulous time. Do you have anything that you want to plug or share, or do you want to tell the people where they can find? Do you even want people to follow you on the internet? Do you want to tell them?
I sure don't. Actually, that's not true. I have been building up my public persona, and I made a workspace_warriors Instagram.
Which Workspace Warriors?
Which Workspace Warriors? So my Whitney's Workspace Warriors, also known on Instagram as Workspace_Warriors. So I post like some of the education stuff that I do, because my therapist is awesome and helped me realize the value in sharing those things with the world.
Absolutely.
Even though I don't sit and mindlessly consume it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a joy talking to you, and getting to catch up, and I guess in front of whoever is going to be listening to this. As always, you can find me on Instagram at I Do Death. You can follow the show at Get Stiff Podcast on Instagram. You can also keep up with us at idodeath.com. And as always, it's been great. Y'all, be easy. A few weeks ago, I was able to sit down and have a conversation with Dr. Whitney Griffin. We talked about a lot of different topics regarding grief and trauma in respects to the brain and the physical manifestation of those experiences on the body. So now I'm here with my co-host, Alexis, and we're going to get her thoughts on the conversation and reflect a little bit.
The thing that stood out to me the most was this concept of pre-soothing that Whitney was talking about. And I think about how we could really apply something like that in death care, right? Because a lot of the times when we're having anticipatory grief, when we're knowing we're having to go to funerals, or that someone is about to pass away, and doing these things. And I think she talked about like incorporating all of your senses. So like the 5 senses, and really just targeting those things to ground yourself back into the present moment, because a lot of the times we're in the future, in the past, and especially when it comes to something like grief, that just becomes kind of all encompassing. I think that listening to her talk about that, and I don't know, in a way kind of normalize it when it comes to grief was really great. What else did she touch on? Just about trauma on the brain, because she equated grief to being a type of trauma, which I think oftentimes we don't consider it, right? We don't really consider it a trauma. And a lot of times there's almost a shame when you're grieving, or someone thinks you should be past a certain point of grieving, or a certain time frame that you give yourself. Like, okay, I'm only going to cry about whoever for a week, and then I need to be past it. But grief doesn't work that way, especially with how Dr. Whitney was telling us that the impact that grief has actually on the brain and the central nervous system altogether, just how big it truly is, and how it's not just something that you can put a time frame on.
I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said it, how it interacts with your entire nervous system, and kind of how she even talked about sending, using the blood in your body to send more oxygen to the brain.
Yeah. Yeah, she said it's a full body experience, and how movement is medicine. And especially when it comes to something like grief, it's important to stay in your body and make sure that you're doing things to make sure your cells are getting more oxygen, or your brain is getting more oxygen, because it's all one big machine. So if one thing is deprived, other things are going to kind of start to fail. And something as big and immense and as heavy as grief, if it's impacting your brain, your whole entire being, your every cell in your body is going to be impacted. So I thought that was really something interesting that she emphasized. And it was really nice to hear her take on it from a scientific and kind of spiritual, side of things, because her experience with yoga, and how she was talking about, her experience with helping people with Parkinson's disease use movement to try to heal as much as their body and their mind allowed them to, right? Because unfortunately there's no full recovery for people like that. But just seeing how incorporating more physical things like yoga can kind of reverse the physical impact that grief is having on your whole entire body. So I thought that was really, really great to hear.
And something else that she shared that wasn't, that was in one of our conversations that were, it wasn't recorded, was how specifically and I think in the episode that we have with Claire, she talks about it as well, where when your chakras are closed, especially that heart chakra, how people are kind of caved in, and it's
your posture.
You're subconsciously trying to contract and shield yourself. And by implementing that movement, by opening your body up, you're allowing that blood to flow, but that also is representative.
Yes.
There we go.
Representative.
Too many ruby reds of vulnerability. And you're, by opening up that part of your body, opening up your chest, opening yourself back up to the world, you are putting yourself in a more vulnerable space. And that can be scary for a lot of people. I mean, no matter how comfortable you are with, with death and grief, or no matter how far along you are on your journey, that's still a very scary space to be in.
And I think that this is a common misconception for people, especially people like us who do have so much experience with death and grieving and everything. But I mean, when we have people die, we still go through the motions, and things are not any different just because we have experience. And one thing Whitney was talking about that I really appreciated her kind of touching on was mindfulness, because there has been so much research that has shown, even if you already feel like you don't necessarily need to, right? Because you've got people who will say like, well, I'm happy, I don't need to do things like this. But mindfulness, when you're doing great and when you're not doing great, it just, the impact that it has, and there's scientific research behind this, on your body and on your mood and on everything. But especially when things are hard, like when you are grieving the loss of a loved one, it's so important to make sure that you are feeling these things. Like I think you guys talked about that feel the feels. Like you need to acknowledge these things, and you need to be in the present moment, and accepting what you're going through and knowing that you are going to come out on the other side, especially when something is so heavy as grief is. I mean, because grief takes a physical toll on you.
It does.
It's not just an emotional thing. I think people forget, like they see our physical being and our emotional being as two separate things, and they're not. They're so interwoven that when one is impacted, the other is impacted. So the grief and the emotional body, you are going to feel in your physical body, and it's important that you take care of both, right? And that was something I feel like Dr. Whitney really was touching on when she was speaking about yoga and why yoga is so helpful in situations like when you're grieving, because you need to be able to be present and to feel the feels, but to be okay with not being okay. Anything else?
No, I fully agree. I think you hit the nail right on the head with all of that. I ain't got nothing else.
Okay, so another thing I wanted to kind of touch on is when Dr. Whitney's talking about decalibrating the nervous system. And I think for some people who may not understand, it just is kind of not dissecting, but just really tuning into, because your central nervous system, if you're not familiar, is literally your brain and your spinal cord and your nerves. And those things can get impacted and infected when you are grieving, because it becomes an all-encompassing thing. So when you are doing things to take yourself out of this emotional body and into your physical, like yoga,
Gross.
or walking, gross.
Not the yoga.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was really cool that was something that she really focused on. And I'd be wanting to take like a yoga class with her. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, I took a one of her heated yoga sessions.
That might be hard.
And what's funny is I went with her mom, so the class was packed, and it was her mom's name is also Lori. So Miss Lori and I were sitting there side by side, just dripping, sweating, trying to keep up.
You're in there trying to stay in it.
We were. But I've gone to a couple of classes that she's taught, and she's done a couple of private sessions too, which has been really great. And I think we'll have to set that up.
Well, I think the cool thing when you did your grief and color event was bringing that in conjunction with grieving. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be really cool if we did something like that again, where people really can get into their bodies when they're experiencing something, that's really, really hard to deal with.
Yeah, that's something that we want to do a little bit more of, being able to implement, especially because it was a perfect kind of like a not three-peat, but it was a perfect like triad of an event, I guess, in a sense, because we started with, the grief education, and then Whitney led the yoga flow, and then we ended with Sharon doing the sound bath. And so that's definitely something we want to do a little bit more of in the future. Hopefully we'll be able to have more events like that, but just being able to have that space of calm. And it was really wonderful. And I'm really grateful for all the women that came, the people who supported. Thank you for that as well. And we just had a good time, and we're looking to do some more things like that too in the near future.
I think it's important. I think having events like that show you that you're not the only one who's, handling things in a certain way, but also gives you some useful tools, right? Which is what we're about, is educating and giving people the tools to be able to cope with this, because this shit's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to grieve. It's not easy to lose someone you love. None of it is easy. So having people like us and people like Dr. Whitney, who are really just kind of on the side of people and just giving them as much information and education and tools that we can to, make it a little bit easier.
And it doesn't even mean that we're right. Grief looks different for every person. It can show up in different ways. You can react in different ways. And so there is no roadmap. There is no right or wrong way to do things. And you just have to be, one thing that you do have to do, in my opinion, is be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and take it in your own time. And that's really the best advice that I could really give anyone who has lost someone, is that the correct way to do things is exactly how you're doing them now. And you have to listen to your body. You have to listen to your mind. If you've had enough, you've just had enough, and that's okay.
And there's going to be different days will look different. One day you might be able to go to a yoga session and, try to feel it. And the next day you may not have, you just don't have the energy to get out of bed. And that's okay. Days will look differently. But I think, like I said, it's having people like Dr. Whitney who kind of can teach you the scientific background of things and show you hey, on a brain, body level, there are things happening. Your brain is being impacted, that you might feel just a little bit better knowing that there are things going on. So don't ever feel guilty for grieving how you do.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Get Stiff. As always, you can reach out to us at getstiffpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at getstiffpodcast. You can keep up with me at iDoDeath on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok at
I.do.death. You can also follow me at Death with Lex. That's on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. Twitter. All the goods.
For as long as Twitter is around, who knows how much longer that'll last. All right, y'all. This has been Get Stiff. As always, thanks for getting down with us. Stiff talk.
Stiff drinks.
We out.
Get Stiff is produced by Milan Reed. Do you have a topic you want to hear us get into? A drink recipe you'd like to recommend? Do you have a story to share? We want to hear from you. Get in touch at getstiffpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us on Instagram at getstiffpodcast.